The 2019 running of the Tour de Limpopo, which follows in the footsteps of the incredible running of the first event in 2018, starts with a new venue, Bella Bella, meaning there was going to be a brand new stage 1 and a very different look and feel to the event. This time around, 19 teams from around the world, 8 nations all in all, combining to form a peloton of 176 riders, made it to sign-on, registration, and got their briefing ready to go. It was going to be a fun 500 kilometers of racing, with the first day the real sting in the tail, but this time it was the sting in the nose. The first stage asking almost everything of the riders, with 175 kilometers on the queue. The 500 kilometers would take the riders out of Bella Bella to Polokwane, and then the next day would be from Polokwane to Zanin. Base camp would be in Zanin for days 3 and 4.
Hello, we are Team Limpopo. Welcome to Tour de Limpopo 2019.
Last year, it was Gustav Poussin who walked away with a ton of jerseys. You've got to believe it. He walked away with the white shirt. He was the fastest under 23, and he walked away with the GC overall category. So, coming into this event, he was the man to watch out for. But with so many teams joining the fray, and with a lot of powerful riders now coming into play to try and get their points on the plates, remembering that this is a UCI 2.2 event, everyone had travelled from far and wide to try and test their mettle against Limpopo. Stage 1 was going to be 172 kilometers with 4 sprints. That included the finish line sprint. One King of the Mountain hotspots very late on in the stage, that was 142 kilometers deep, meant it was going to be an extremely long day. A predicted 4.5 hours in the saddle for the peloton of 176 riders. In the early morning, well, it was 9 o'clock, so it wasn't super early, which was good as well, because in the winter months here in Limpopo, that meant most riders were going to be rolling out in their full summer race kit with early morning temperatures in the early 20s and looking to not rise further than the 30s. Perfect race conditions. As our local dignitaries opened up the race conditions, the riders would go out in the first couple of kilometers through the town of Bella Bella under neutralization. This gave the riders a little bit of extra time to get their legs nice and warm. It also gave the locals time to watch from the sidelines to see what was going to be going down. The spectacle of 176 riders going through the streets of Bella Bella for the first time ever. This was going to be a very much question mark for all the riders. Were they prepared for what was to come? A very long strip of tarmac lay ahead of them, and as soon as the neutralization zone was over, we started to really pick up the pace and get things going. Morimole was going to be our first sprint of the day. That was points on the plate for the sprinters, 26.7 kilometers, and on the stripe, it was the first blood to Nolan Hoffman. Soon as the sprint was over, we expected to see a couple of attacks coming in, and they were important as well, because the second sprint of the day was just around the corner. They came thick and fast, and everyone wanted their piece of the pie. Mokopong would be the next area that the riders headed to. This brought them around about the 50-kilometer marker, and still there was over 120 kilometers of racing to go. We started to see a couple of breakouts as well. Bunches started to form and work well together, but there was never that big push and never the huge breakaway. Although, when we came into the second sprint of Mokopong, we started to see some new blood and new riders arrive. With lead-outs from ACDC, Tristan Cuthbert was definitely one of the riders that was trying to push on, but it was his teammate, Jason Oosthuizen, who took the second sprint and the points that went along with it, and also the third sprint. Once that happened though, we started to see a different rider and a different take on the race. In the flatland, wide open sections, it was the big guy, Brad Potgieter, who started to charge to the front and made a bid for freedom as he broke away, out by himself for around about 5 to 6 minutes, but it was never going to be a solo mission. Not with what the stage still had remaining. Slowly but surely, Brad was brought back into the pack. The lead group was now made up of 20 extremely strong and committed riders as they tried to run the numbers. They would have to trim that down as well, because we were heading to the next major point of the tour. 142 kilometers was the climb of Eysterberg. This was going to be a 3-kilometer climb with a 4.5% gradient, and you didn't want to be going up against 20 riders. Dimension Dotter took the bull by the horns, and it was Connor Brown that tagged his name as King of the Mountains. With one climb on the stage, that meant he would be wearing the polka dots overnight. That climb also marked the splitting of the group. 20 had now become the Power 11. And these riders worked well together in the last 50 kilometers to maintain a massive group over the chasers and also work well together. The run into town was going to be a small blind rise, and straight after that they would start getting into town. It was a relatively technical finish as well. A couple of hard 90s, but as soon as you have finished the last right-hand turn, that's when things got scary. 11 riders went into the sprint. It was a Dimension Data pair of Connor Brown and Alex Konichev, but coming over the top was Gustav Besson, who took the opening stage win.
The race was actually quite hectic in the sense of a lot of oaks going in the front and a lot of guys leaving small gaps, and then it was basically just chaos, to be honest, for the first 120 Ks until the big group got away. That kind of settled things down and we can actually just ride, and it wasn't... So actually it was nice to have that because it takes your mind off the long road ahead.
All right, so tomorrow we get things ready. 96 kilometers, straight line until, about 15 Ks out. Then we go windy down the hill, and we'll see you in Zanin. On the third step, Mark Pritson for Office Guru. Second step, Dimension Daughters, Konichev, and TEG's Gustav Besson on top. You join us on stage number 2, day number 2 of the 2019 running of the Tour de Limpopo. A great highlights package yesterday, giving you a look and feel and trying to condense 175 kilometers into a very short highlights package. Today, a relatively long day as well, but the distances are going to be coming down and the speed will definitely be up. The first half of today's running is going to be on the flatlands as the riders made their way out of Polokwane, just outside of the Peter Mokaba Stadium. They would be under decontrol and neutralization for 15 minutes until they cleared the area of Polokwane. After that, what they had to look forward to was an incredible run. My name is Matt Smith. I'm going to be coming to you all the way through the tour and today alongside my co-commentator Kurt Begerman. Kurt, yesterday was an absolutely epic day, but really it was very much a warm-up. Today is where the tour starts.
Yesterday was a fantastic day. It was what we might consider the Queen stage in terms of distance, at least, 170 Ks long. Temperature wasn't bad at all. It was below the 30s. It was around about 28 degrees as a high. It wasn't very much wind, 7 degrees. But it was the distance that caught a lot of riders off guard, especially for some of the regional riders and the local South African riders who kind of are limited to races of about 100, 110K. Some of the more experienced international riders are used to that kind of distance. So it definitely took a toll. We saw the bunch whittle down. 11 guys came to the line initially. Then there were dribs and drabs behind that. But it was a fast 175K if you consider that it was done in under 4 hours.
It was. We were expecting a 4.5 hours, so they were, it was a strong estimate as well. This course has been pre-run by some tasty riders that know what they're doing. So to come in half an hour under was absolutely incredible. That was the leaders though, and the half hour actually did mark correctly for the last riders coming across the line. So we did see some big bunches split up. 176 riders did take the gate this morning as well. So we actually didn't lose anyone from yesterday, and that's fantastic because we're obviously running under some very tight, is it 12% the rule now when the riders have to come across? 20%, yeah. I knew there was a T in there. Yeah. 20% of the time from the race leader, and that's very interesting because that means no matter what, you have got to stay in the main peloton. And the main peloton were in a little bit of trouble yesterday. At one point, the main peloton was a full 7 minutes behind the leaders.
No, definitely the distance took its toll. I remember talking after the race to Sheldon Mueller, who's from the local Team Limpopo team, and he said that he ended up riding the last 40 Ks entirely on his own, but he did make the time cut, so fantastic, good job for him.
So this is what went down early this morning before we went live. Rolling out of Polokwane and out onto the main road, we were going to be very familiar with the R71 the whole way through, at least the first 50 to 60 kilometers of the race. The sprints this morning did come nice and early as well. It allowed the riders to get themselves into a zone. A very flat and gradual run took us all the way to the main traffic circle. The nobody circle was the big marker. This was the first time we saw some tasty riders starting to come off the front and get themselves into some kind of position to go out and chase down on the first sprint. This traffic circle that we're going around, this one that we're picking up on right now, was not the nobody circle, but it did give the riders a look and feel of how to sweep the turns and get themselves into position to be ready for the first sprint. The sprint hotspot, Kurt, was going to be coming in at 9:55 on prediction, but it was at the 26.6 kilometer marker.
Well, the speeds leading up to that, it was a very gentle, sort of undulating roll out of the city. And for the first 25, 26K, it was definitely slightly up, slightly down. Speeds of up to 60K an hour were steady. There was quite a few attacks that didn't amount to any. The attacks were coming from teams like Office Guru, Pro Kinetic with Carl Bontes, but they didn't amount to much. I think people aware that there was only really one hotspot sprint on the way today, so the reactions to those attacks were covered quickly.
Yeah, Pro Touch took up the early running. Lloyd was there, Deploy, Warsdale and Downs. They were brought back into the fold, and then another small two-man attack, but as you'll see from the shots here, they were chased down very early on. It was way too early in the day to start pulling the pin and trying to drop the hammer. The story of today was going to be a stage of two halves. Very much the morning session was going to be about getting those sprint hotspots done on the lowlands and flatlands. But really, for us, the build was going to be around about when we start getting to the bottom of the King of the Mountains climb, and that was going to take us to around about the 10 o'clock marker. Moria City, the intersection, the next feature that we would look at after the first sprint hotspot was really going to be a change of scenery. In the highlands and the flatlands, it was all about speed and building up to the sprint hotspots, and cooler, much cooler on the high end there. And as soon as we got into the second half, and we'll be talking about just now, when we get into the second half of the stage, that is where the geography, the topography, and the humidity will really come into play. It's a totally different second half of the stage. The first sprint was a big story for us. We saw some big hitters coming forward. The green was on fire, but it was a very, very long build-up to this line.
It was a long build-up, and I saw that the Enza rider, Nolan Hoffman, who went a little bit early there, he was covered by the green jersey, Jason Oosthuizen. But what was interesting was the NCCS Herman Keller. He also challenged Hoffman, but came to no avail, with Oosthuizen, the green jersey winner, winning that sprint over Nolan Hoffman from Enza.
And then just after that, right at the front of the pack, one of the big players from yesterday went down hard. Great shots from the camera up in the sky, picked up on Brad Potgieter, ate it hard and took down almost half of the pack.
That was a tough crash. I mean, no one, wants to go down, and no one wants to make a mistake. But on these roads with very small shoulders, those things are going to happen because the shoulders are broken and people will end up on the dirt pretty quickly.
Importantly, look to the left-hand side of the shot. Yellow jersey went down. Green jersey was caught up but didn't have a problem. So the big story for the early part of today was overall GC went down.
Well, the other interesting thing was that that crash, which was caused by Brad Potgieter unintentionally, of course.
Yeah, I just slipped a wheel off the side, and there was no coming back from that.
But the terrible news about that is how ironic is it that Brad's crash causes the abandonment of Craig Orion, his teammate number 104, who was such a strong role player yesterday.
Yeah, that slow cadence, small rider. We had him tagged as one of the top sprinters on the tour, and unfortunately he has had to bow out of it. It looks like he is the only man to walk away from the tour. Everyone else is on the comeback. But what happened straight after that, and we do see this in tours, there were massive attacks coming that straight into play. There was initially a breakout of around about 12 riders, and then a couple of riders started to show their names off the front. Clint Hendricks was in the breakaway, Callum Ormiston, you had Travis Barrett, Dave Murray, and KB Kruger. There were some big hitters, but that crash has been the early drama on this stage.
Well, I think what had happened was they realized that the yellow jersey had been marooned, and it's kind of unsportsmanlike to capitalize on a mistake of a crash. So they sort of neutralized it and brought it back. But here, where we are reaching the sort of stair-step climbs at Mackenzie. And so this is a 4-part stair-step climb that is going to be taxing. We drove this morning, Matt, and I remember you see the first part and you think, okay, this is it, and then you get over that and you see another part and you go, okay, and then there's another part. So this is a really interesting part. It enters the district of Mapani and is the
famous Mapani worms?
Yeah. And this is the sort of precursor to the main climb of the day.
By this stage, we've already gone past, and unfortunately, we were off camera during it, but we went past the Zion City Church, the biggest gathering, the biggest open-air church in the world. That was host to 3 million pilgrims. Happens every single year as well. Absolutely incredible situation that goes down on the Christian Easter weekend. So that was an area that we tagged this morning as basically as soon as you were past Moria, you were going to get onto the steps. Right. And like you say, it's a triple click. and then there's a soft right-hander, and you think you've finished all the climbs, and then there's a fourth kick, which takes you even further up. And pretty much from this point on, this is why we say this is a stage of two halves. The easy part, if you want to call it easy, there's no easy part of any stage, but the first 40 Ks or so, relatively flat and straight. From now on, if you're not going up, you're going down, and it's going to be wild.
Well, it's for the guys who raced this tour last year, this is very important because they're going to see these stair-step climbs, and they're going to realize if this is not the climb. For riders who haven't ridden this, they're going to think that this is the actual climb, and they may start to pace themselves at a different tempo. But right now we're looking at the lead break of 5 riders, and let's talk about these riders. We've got some really good talented riders here. HB Kruger, who's in the red jersey for Alpha Bodyworks. This guy is a class rider. He does multiple disciplines, mountain bike racer, road racer, very good rider, potential leader of that team. He has won the King of the Mountains jersey in the Tour of Good Hope before.
This is the second bunch. I just want to jump in there as well. This is the second bunch. Now the bunch, because of that crash, is split up into 3. So we're going to have to see if, and the timing couldn't have been worse, because I don't see these bunches trying to come back together anytime soon. So the second bunch is now 20 seconds off. And then it's Dimension Data, who are really at the pointy end of this, trying to bring everyone back together. You can see them just down the road there. These are some of the almost blind turns, and it is a really comfortable position for the riders. But I only see 20 seconds, and there's a lot of power in that chase group. They're going to bring these guys back. So I think this is a lot of effort for these riders staying out there. But potentially, they are actually just living comfortably. They didn't try and break away. They simply didn't get collected in the crash. That's why they have the gap.
Potentially, yeah. You've got Clint Hendricks. Now, he was a catalyst in last year's race. He's got number 1 on his bike. He's a good rider. He's rolling strong through there. You've also got David Marais for Team Enza Proud Beginners. He's another strong rider who's had multiple results on the road and the track, former Commonwealth Games team member. So with HB Kruger in the red jersey, Alpha Bodyworks, Marais in the blue jersey in 4th position for Enza, and Clint Hendricks currently in 3rd position on white. You've got 3 really strong riders out of the 5 here. I'm just trying to get confirmation of the other 2 riders. I know it's an AC/DC rider on the front, AC/DC Electrical Solutions. That's a prominent team in the race. I think it might be Callum Ormiston. I'm just waiting for confirmation on that. But this is a strong team. You can see the rest of the field is starting to get strung out a little bit as the pace goes on the front. Now, the Dimension Data guys who are riding on the front should know through experience that this isn't the actual climb. They've still got some time to pull these guys back, and they're not going to panic. They're just going to set a steady state for their team because they currently control or run the King of the Mountains jersey. They have that on their back. So that'll be something that they're trying to defend. No worries just yet.
Yeah, and I was just trying to look at some of the GCs from yesterday as well. And you've got to go way down the page to pick up on Hendricks. He is outside of the top 20 at the moment. He was a no-show basically yesterday, and one of the riders that I'd expected to see at the front. So many riders, like you said, sorry, I just had to jump off mic there for a second, but so many riders, like you said, got their timing wrong. That was a nice way of saying it, basically.
Yeah, well, I think people got caught out yesterday, but I'd like to see HB Kruger, how far he is down, because in this break, he is probably lying in 22nd overall, I think.
Kruger is a no-show inside the top 20 at the moment, so there's a lot of riders that are just arriving today, and this may be a bit of a springboard. There's definitely going to be a situation. What we will keep an eye on, and we'll ask the camera guys up in the sky to go back at some point. The good thing for you and me today is there's all the jerseys are out there in the right places. So we're going to be looking back to see where Gustav Busson is in the yellow, because currently he has lost the overall race lead.
So the best placed rider in this group is David Marais. So David Marais is lying 13th overall on GC, and he is in this move.
And already you can see 5 have become 4. So the little kicks that we didn't have to drop a gear in the car, thank goodness, but these guys are.
Yeah, no, so you're right. And so we've got that down to Callum Ormiston. We've got Clint Hendricks. We've got HB Kruger and David Marais.
Yeah, it was Barrett that actually went out. We're getting some great information. Good job for young Miles, who's actually in the team vehicles down there, feeding us some of the information on the ground, and it's really valuable. Thanks, Miles, for that.
Well, and you can see we've just crested one of those stair steps because the cadence
a little bit of
increased.
Speed come up, yeah.
Yeah. And but now we've got a chase group of maybe 20.
This is the third group. So this is a very interesting situation. We're going to see how fast the pace is, how much the urgency is, and obviously you can see the yellow jersey right in the middle of the pack there. Watch for the team game to come into play. This is where the team really start to look after their team leader. They're going to look after him. They're going to make sure he's got someone in front, someone on the elbow, someone on the shoulder, someone on the tail. He's going to be protected from here on in. But look at the urgency on this pace.
Yeah, I'm waiting for confirmation on this. I think this might be the second group because I'm looking at that chopper and is that not the lead group up in the distance, the 4 guys in the distance?
Well, we're going to get that answered quite shortly because the pace of the 4 and the pace of this group is marked different. They are very, very strong at the moment. Nice shots up in the chopper here of the surviving 4, but we'll get a little bit more of an open shot and we'll see how close the group is. At one time, it was 20 seconds, but as soon as you can see Alpha at the back there looking over the shoulder. As soon as you look over the shoulder, you know that gap is less than 20.
Yeah, well, I know that Kruger is obviously a good climber, and he's wanting to kind of assess whether he should go alone maybe, or encourage the group to increase its pace, or whether it's better to turn off the throttle and wait for the other climbers to join him. I mean, it's far too far away for you to be going alone at this point. But I think the group is going to come together now.
Well, the next marker, and incredibly enough, can you believe it? You know, oh, here we go. They're coming together. That was less than 20 seconds. Now it's less than 5. We are now closing in on King of the Mountains. That's why there's a bit of a kick here. That's why there's an increase on tempo. Now, in the King of the Mountains challenge, coming at the end of yesterday, with just one King of the Mountains scoring points, it was very difficult to know who was going to get the job done. Connor Brown was actually the man that went over the top first yesterday, and this is going to be a slightly different situation. There are many riders here that desperately want these points. It's actually just out of the shade here. So we came across this morning. Just as you come out of the trees, there's a little stripe across the line. There's a marker on the outside. So we're going to have to see who does it. Connor Brown, Girdleston, and Kent Main were the riders, but we may see a different name at the top here. No one's going to catch Alpha right now.
No, that's HB Kruger. What a good job there.
He's puffing and blowing there, though.
And David Maria has gone in for second. So HB Kruger gets it for Alpha Bodyworks Giant.
Yeah, confirmation. Here's the stripe.
David Maria fighting hard for second place. Looks like he may get it. Yes, he just snuck in. Pro Touch may have got third and fourth. Not too sure. So that's very interesting. Good job on the breakaway, guys.
Very
I love
good.
It when
they did survive.
Yeah, exactly. You want people to get rewarded for their effort. So, but that Pro Touch rider doesn't look like he was from the original move, and with the sheen of the sun on that jersey, I can't tell if that is the King of the Mountains jersey of Brown.
Yeah, that's Brownie. No,
Nice.
Confirmation. Brownie up there as well. So close enough to keep one hand on the trophy. He should be able to go to bed tonight with the shirt still on his shoulders. Bearing in mind, this is the highest point, and incredibly enough, they did get there really far ahead of schedule. That's a lot of climbing. So now the story of the rest of the stage, incredibly enough, that gets us to 56 kilometers of 96. So a piffling 40 kilometers remain, but you know what's in those 40 kilometers.
It's up and down. If it's not going up, it's going down. And here's the thing about that, is that if you've been dropped, you cannot recover on the downhill.
Ways.
You're chasing on the downhill.
Very
so
difficult.
your leg tension on the chain is always constant if you're not in the front part of the race. So people think, well, I can recover on the downhill. You can't because you're chasing. So it's going to be a very unforgiving next sort of 50K to the line.
Yep.
And that's why the pace is on. Everyone's in a long line.
This is beautiful, though. First little bit of shade for the guys. Basically, they were in the shade of the trees coming up to the first King of the Mountains, the only King of the Mountains on the day. And now the tarmac starts to change. The tarmac rolls a little bit faster, and a little bit of shade. It does give you some respite, but it's beautiful. Really fast, really flowing from here on out. There's a lot of fake descents. So we've just come from the highest point. We have a descent that takes around about maybe 3 to 4 kilometers. Then it's just a number of flatland sections. We almost call it Dragon's Back because you're going straight down, straight up. It's like a roller coaster, and one of the most enjoyable roller coasters out there. So watch for the riders that can really descend. This really doesn't showcase it. This is a really open, flowing section. Everyone's going to be matching each other, and that big bunch that has Gustav Besson at the head. He's going to be the engine and the powertrain of this because he is one of the strongest descenders in the field. and he is going to absolutely fly and eat up the lead that those 4 breakaway riders have. Already you can see the splintering, and this is just riders recovering ever so slightly from the King of the Mountains, but this is a beautiful first recovery, lovely flow for the next couple of kilometers.
Well, Matt, this is the highest point of the tour, and this is the climb of the day, but this is not the trickiest descent of the day.
No
this
way.
is long and sweeping, and it's definitely fast. I mean, the guys are booking it here, certainly over 80k an hour, but this is the descent towards Hanetsburg. This is not the technical descent down Mokuba's cliff.
This has brought everyone together as well. Yes. Yeah, the highlight of today, like I said, I mean, I was so excited. I think I oversold it yesterday to you, actually, when we were talking about the build-up, Kurt. But I think I didn't sell it too short. By the time we actually got down to the Mokuba's Kloof finish pass, it was absolutely fantastic. But this gives it look and feel, and a different idea as well, because you'll note I'd become a little bit of a geography teacher at this stage of the game. It's lovely flow, and we've come from the scrublands and a very almost semi-arid situation on the flatlands to come now into forest. There's 3 changes. We go from flatland and scrubland, we come into the forest, and then we go tropical.
Well, I think we talked about it today in the car. It was going from aloes to forest to bananas.
Lovely shot there on board. Thanks, guys. Always love that. 80 k's an hour. Thank you very much. Absolute butter. And look at this. All of a sudden, it looks like you're in the Cape Winelands. This is the pure beauty. We really come into an absolutely gorgeous area of Limpopo as we come into the final 40 kilometers of stage number 2. And who's on the front, or starting to get his way to the front, and he's got that big tuck going? Gustav.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually hit the ground when he went when there was a crash. I think it was a stall out. I think it was maybe jammed up with a couple of bikes. I didn't see a wheel change. I'll get confirmation from him when I see him, but his heart would have been in his mouth for a little bit, because this very much is Gustav's stage.
Well, a confirmation, that crash did happen towards the front, so it's not like the yellow jersey was poorly positioned and he was near the back of the field, which would have been, an error on his part. My coach used to say nothing good happens at the back of the race. Bottles, punctures, and crashes. But that crash, in fact, happened towards the front, and I think he was affected by that just by being caught. Perhaps he put a foot down and he was kind of pinned, couldn't get out. So, but we'll know more about that later.
Whee! Policeman in the middle of the road
this
there.
is not good.
That was fun.
Yeah,
I had my heart in my mouth there just for a second. He's basically just trying to make sure that the riders all stay to the left-hand side. They were spread wide, and they should know that they must stay to the left-hand side. This is a rolling road closure, and we'll just explain that.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine being that policeman and having cyclists pass me at 55k an hour. But the rolling road closure means that the sort of marshals that travel ahead of the peloton and behind the peloton, these guys on the bikes, the road warriors, they kind of move the vehicles to the side, and they sort of stop intersections from happening as the peloton approaches. Now, the tricky part about a rolling road closure is that they've got to be a minute or so ahead of the field. So they'll go through an intersection and they'll say, hey, can you just wait a minute? And then the people will wait at the intersection, not necessarily see something coming, and start to move into the intersection, and bang, there are the riders. So it's a very tricky thing, a very precarious thing.
Thanks
but now
for
we're
that,
seeing
Kurt.
first King of the Mountains shot.
Yeah. Connor was actually off the front for a little while there, so he's in good place. He's positioned himself well in the early stages of this event, riding under the Dimension Data for Quebecer colours. Over the top there, you just saw Clint Hendricks, who suddenly come to life, 37 kilometers outside of Zanin, and as we said, from here on out, you're going to start seeing a little bit of a yo-yo situation. On the descents, you'll see a long, thin line. On the climbs, you'll see them all come bunching back together. Most aggressive rider, Jade Julius, is in the bunch as well. It's not a stage where you'll see an attack, certainly not from this point out. You might see a couple of guys charge, or there's a bit of a mechanical issue. That looked like Office Guru, possibly Warsdale, and looks like he had some issues with his chain, or certainly the front mech.
I also noticed in the field here up front is the rider James Jobber, who finished in the top 10 yesterday. He's the great British rider from Velo Skills. So nice to see him here. He was a smooth rider. That's him on the far right-hand side with the yellow flashes on his shoulders.
You know what? As we yesterday, we had probably 3, maybe 4 of the powerhouse teams at the front. This time around, we've got a very broad spread, and just a confirmation that Gustav Besson is in the lead bunch as we keep an eye on our race commissaire. He's trying to check up on what the gaps are and see how everyone is playing the game.
Yeah, I always love that shot of the race commissaire, and I'm like, he's standing on the seats of an Audi.
It's not his, though. It's not his.
Yeah, I know. It's not, no, but fantastic. I would love to have that position in a way, because you get to see probably the most of the race.
What he's trying to do is actually keep an eye on the team vehicles. It's a very thin section of the road. You can see we are blessed with a hard shoulder, so most of the riders are staying to the left-hand side of the hard shoulder to make sure everything is good to go. But the race officials, certainly on a rolling road closure, have their work cut out for them.
And this is one of those sharp little kickers with the undulating roads between the top of the King of the Mountains and the top of the Mokuba pass, which we will descend. When we noticed that Office Guru rider pull off to the side of the road who needed a mechanical, I don't think it was one of their team leaders, because you still have two of their riders sitting up front here. Mark Pritzen as well, who finished third on yesterday's stage. I spoke to him after the race yesterday, and I didn't know that he has been recovering from a chest infection. So he's doing incredibly well for someone who's coming back from a cold.
Yeah, look at this. This is Office Guru. They're sitting 2, 3, and 4. So Girdleston is up there, Edwards. That's very, very strong, and Pritzen. So they're working very, very well together, and that just shows you they're good climbers and good descenders. It's going to be very difficult to call this one. There are essentially 3 descents, with one main descent quite close to the end of the stage. But unfortunately, it's not at the end of the valley where the finish is. It's a false finish, isn't it?
Right. Well, the descent at the top of the Mokuba pass, from the top of that to the bottom of the descent, that's 8 Ks long. It's technical. But at the bottom of the descent, we have 8 Ks to the line.
Yep.
So there still is some distance for riders to make it across. But if you get it wrong on that descent, and you have to put a foot down and regain your momentum, you could lose 30 plus seconds. A group could hold 30 plus seconds over 8K.
Yeah, the difficult part is the amount of time you can gain, and Basson and a number of riders showed how much your descending prowess can actually give you the result. The difference is it's the power of this main peloton at the moment. They're going to have to start trimming the fat, and I don't think at this stage there's too much fat in that bunch. There are very, very tasty riders that can climb and descend. It's just the intensity from now on. You're going to see the pace pick up, and you're going to start seeing some attacks. It's far too big a bunch to be able to start going into the final 20 kilometers. You don't want this many people to deal with.
No, I think this is a good selection of the riders who can get over the climbs, but not necessarily the riders who can descent well. And literally the descent down Mokuba Pass is 100% more technical than what we've just seen.
Yeah, they're forcing riders to go into some kind of sprint and attack. No one is really wanting to open up the taps at the moment. You can see the 166 charging off the front there. All of a sudden, over the top comes the 65 of Edwards. So Edwards did show some good form last year as well. In fact, one of these stages was actually taken by Edwards. So Edwards knows these roads very well, and he's feeling comfortable. He's looking for a pal to go out off the front with him.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, no, there's definitely going to be... One of the other things, though, that I must put in is that 4K from the line, there's an off-ramp.
Yep.
And that off-ramp is, in my book, the last opportunity for anyone to put in a ferocious attack that could potentially stick.
And what we saw last year was attacks came just over the river. There was that big ridge river crossing that we had on the way into town. Pretty much you cross the river, you look for the off-ramp, but the attacks were coming just before or just after there. In fact, I remember Clint Hendricks last year had, he was asking for people to come with him, and no one would work with him. And he got into quite a bit of bother as you see the attacks coming. So we called this, we knew this was going to be the case on these small kickers as you'll make your way into the final descents. People want to get rid on the climb, so you don't have to deal with too much traffic on the way down.
Yeah. No, I wonder if that's Jay Julius, who attacked in the most aggressive rider's jersey, the red jersey, because he had a pair of black shorts on, different from the Alpha Bodyworks guys. If you want to distinguish it, the Alpha Bodyworks guys are in the red jersey.
You would imagine that's going to be him. Yeah, it is. He's off the front there. He just peeled off to the left-hand side. But realistically, there's no one standing out today so far as the most attacking rider. And it could be a situation where the most attacking rider may well be the rider that actually takes the line. At the moment, let's just confirm our King of the Mountain results as they went over the top. Confirmation that it was HB Kruger getting the win ahead of David Murray. Connor Brown in third place. So we'll do some little bit of maths soon and let you guys know provisionally what the points are looking like for the King of the Mountains. And Kent Main also did a very good job for a fourth place across the stripe. So HB Kruger confirmed the rider number 112 with the win. David Murray with a 166 on his back. He took a second place finish. The overnight, Connor Brown, he had the polka dots. He'll be hoping to go to bed tonight again with the polka dots. And Kent Main was 4th place. So those points will start to add up. Here we go. Another descent coming into play. This was also a nice rolling one. It takes you into the wide open valley. So again, not a super tight descent, just a long gradual flowing around about 2.5 to 3 kilometers. Takes you into flatlands, and pretty much as soon as you are stopping or starting to slow down the pace, you have to find some gears and go back up. So if you look forward there, creeping just over the 80 kilometer marker, thanks once again to our camera crews and our bikes, and you see the wide open roads as we sweep on through here. Jay Julius with his arm up there, he wants some juice. He's done some climbing, he's done some descending, he's done some attacking, and we are getting close to the 80 kilometer marker. Time for a drink.
Yeah, that's Jay Julius. As I was saying, if you want to get some distinction between the red jerseys, Jay Julius has the black shorts of TG, I think it is, and Alpha Bodyworks has the blue shorts.
Mike, I didn't even hear you, bud. You join us as we are at the 3/4 marker of stage number 2, day number 2 of the 2019 running of the Tour de Limpopo. We're in the lush lowlands, or certainly that's where we're heading. There is a ton of undulating small little kickers that are going to take us down to the finish line. Zanin, it's going to be our home base for the next 2 days as we start to see the bunch try and break it out and thin it out. They're trying to thin the herd at the moment. There is still 20 riders strong, and they are all extremely well-placed and tasty riders. The important part is, as we come back, if you are joining us for our live coverage of day number 2 of the Tour de France, Gustav Poussin in the yellow jersey, the overnight GC leader, went down early on, around about 35 Ks into the race. He was almost at the back of the pack. The good news was the pack was still very much together. No one had broken away. No one had stretched out. So his team looked after him nicely. TEG brought him back, and he is sitting well positioned inside the lead bunch.
The other thing that happened there, Matt, earlier on was that we have gone through the King of the Mountains points of the day, and I just did a tally up after yesterday. So yesterday we had Connor Brown from Dimension Data for Quebec leading the King of the Mountains competition over Girdleston and over Kent Main in 3rd place. Today we had HB Kruger from Alpha Bodyworks. He won the sprint today over David Murray from Enza Proud Beginners, and over Connor Brown in 3rd for Dimension Data for Quebec. This gives us overall King of the Mountains so far for at the end of today. This is how it's going to read. Connor Brown is still going to lead that competition for Dimension Data with 7 points. In second is now going to be HB Kruger with 5 points.
So HB steps up.
Yeah, for Alpha Bodyworks. That's nice that they're starting to get into this tour here. In 3rd place, we've got a 3-way tie between David Murray at Enza Proud Beginners, between Girdlestone, and between Maine, also with 3 points apiece. So King of the Mountains starting to play out for us in this tour.
And go forward into tomorrow. Tomorrow is a 103 stage with an early and a late King of the Mountains. King of the Mountains comes early at kilometer 36.9, but also we have a mountain top finish. The first time we've done it for the Tour de Limpopo. Tomorrow ends at the top of a climb. So 2 KOMs and a ton of points. So the King of the Mountains riders are going to have to be running high in the GCs tomorrow as well.
Well, and now that competition is kind of sorted for today, we see Connor Brown changing roles, going into more of a pacing domestic role, and he's
lovely role he's got.
Yeah, no, he's going to be leading out Alexander Konashev. Now, Konashev, for those of you who missed yesterday's coverage, is the son of former famed Dmitry Konashev, who was a great pro rider, one of the first Russian riders to make it into the pro peloton for the Alpha Loom team back in the late 80s, early 90s. Now, Konashev was a great sprinter. Alexander, his son, also a good sprinter. Yesterday, yes, he got the sprint finish wrong. He finished second. But he's got today written all over his lips because he knows that this is another sprint finish if he can be in the front group before the finish. And his guys are protecting him.
it's an interesting finish, and one of the reasons you and I drove the route yesterday was to be familiar, but also to understand and to try and discuss strategy. A downhill finish for a sprinter is not a true sprinter finish. It's the guys that actually can carry speed. So sometimes you'll see a non-sprinter win at these kind of events, at this kind of finish. So again, you don't want to be taking 20 people to the line. And I know I keep sounding like a broken record. This bunch is too big, and it is going to thin out. I'm not too worried, because we're about to get to the sweet spot.
Yeah, no, the descent, it's rare that you get a descent, perhaps in races like Milan-San Remo.
Oh, Marais is going.
Yeah, Marais. So you rarely get a descent that's going to be a factor in terms of deciding the outcome of the day. In classics like Milan-San Remo, that is certainly a factor. For today, in the Tour of Limpopo, this descent off of the Mokuba Pass is going to be a game changer for the finish line.
That's why we're seeing some urgency here. The guys are trying to attack on the flatlands. Again, a false flat. It's a slight descent, and you don't want to be using too much horsepower, but you don't want to lose the gap. And that's what people are trying to create now. It looks like the powerhouse squads are off the front. TEG and Pro Touch really trying to get a handle on this one. I see the Enza guys are constantly in the mix, but there's only ever one of them. And there's not too much team cohesion there at the moment.
No. Well, Marais is a good finisher, and a savvy descender as well. So
there's a different style. I've never seen the side saddle Froome tuck. He's obviously feeling the pain from yesterday as well. That's one of the. I think that's one of the skills riders.
Perhaps. Now that's going to be another one to talk about, because the skills riders are used to. Many of them have come off of good results in the Tour of Northern Ireland, and that's done in the wet, and it's done on precarious roads that go up and down dales. So I'm sure they've got good descending skills.
Thanks for chatting to that as well. So when we drove down the Mokuba descent, that 8 kilometer, we'll call it the finish descent, but it's not, but it's close to the finish. It's really the highlight of the stage though. And the surface of the tarmac was absolutely fantastic. Now, last year we raced at exactly the same time, pretty much a week's difference from the 2018 running of the inaugural running of the Tour de Limpopo. And there was a lot of mist, and there was a lot of slickness happening on that road. The cool thing was, we went down that pass just around about the 8 o'clock marker this morning, an hour before they started, and it was bone dry, perfect conditions. I didn't even hear the tires squealing on the bucky when we went down, and I promise you I wasn't going that quick.
Well, I was noticing how smooth the tarmac was, because there's nothing worse than going around a hairpin bend and seeing the tarmac change from smooth tarmac into chip and seal or something like that, because it's going to have an effect on traction. But the tarmac is in great condition. I also just noticed Louis Visser, rider number 43 for TEG. He's in this field, so there's another good notable rider. And field's starting to be strung out. A lot of Office Guru guys here, so Pritson has support.
Yeah, the Office Guru have positioned themselves extremely well today. And it's something that I recognised from last year. Warsdale was a lovely flatland rider, but such a strong descender. And you can see Marais, he's trying to cover all of the bases here. Marais clearly fancies himself being a good descender and a good sprinter. And he has got Van Heerden in the mix as well there. So my apologies, I didn't see Van Heerden there as his support structure. Two very strong bike handlers, two very strong sprinters. Don't count them out. But unfortunately, in this game, numbers do help.
Yep, numbers do help. But I have to say that if you made me choose one rider who's probably the most aggressive rider in the country, I'm going to say it's Marais.
All right, we've got some little bits of information to feed you. We'll come back to the action in just a few moments. We are now about to head into the pinnacle of day number 2. We've already gone through the highest point, and we are now getting ourselves ready to drop into the spectacular Mokuba Valley. What was scrubland and semi-arid has now become forest, and we're about to drop down into the lush area where all the magnificent fruit is grown in this region. What was desert becomes trees, becomes palm trees at the bottom of the hill. The riders will feel this as well. They'll be getting a nice little draft, but speaking of this, we've got a nice little breakaway here. This was just at the bottom end. We're still building here. It doesn't look like it, but there's a very slight climb here. These guys are in full time trial mode trying to get into the zone. We now have our clear first 3-man breakaway, and this is just before we go over the knuckle.
Well, while we were showing you those fantastic pictures of the region, which is super important, what a beautiful region it is to visit here in the Limpopo area, 3 guys have snuck away. I have to say, HB Kruger, I've said his name a ton of times over the last 2 days, but he is a favorite rider of mine because he's a quality rider, and he's made himself available for the moves.
This looks like Girdleston riding for Office Guru. We've got Casper Kruger, ACDC, and HB Berger. That's a good 3 riders there, and they will have clear air. It's super important. You don't really want to be following someone's wheel down or these 8-kilometer twisties. You really want clear air unless you're unfamiliar with the roads. Now, a road like this, and I think a lot of riders that rode the Tour last year, even if they didn't, they'd have fed back that information to their team, and they won't be going in completely green. They'll know exactly what to do. There are 1 or 2 full loops. In fact, it's very early on. I think we go through a sweeping right, sweeping left, and then we go into a full 180 horseshoe, and the horseshoe is a difficult turn. So this here really marks the beginning of the crazy downhills.
Well, and the difficult thing about this is, we've talked about how technical and how fantastic this descent is, so you're probably going to be expecting awesome pictures, but it's difficult because the tree line starts to cover the road, so the helicopter may not be able to bring us fantastic pictures, but you can see this.
Yeah, that was that sweeping right, a shallow left, and this is a long gradual 180. It was last year. This is kind of the first corner that catches the riders out because you just don't know when it's going to end. It is a never-ending helter-skelter, and it really starts to set the tone. The corners after this start to become a slightly more open, but you'll see there is a narrow, hard shoulder. If you put your shoulder too far in, you're going to be touching the armco. There are a couple of wide bits that open up, but the riders can get lulled into a false sense of security and start to run some wide lines. We're stuck behind the support vehicles at the moment, so it must be around about 3 Ks down the hill already for our leaders as they charge the numbers.
Yeah, it's a real shame that the motorcycles can't get in here, but there have been issued some warnings yesterday of perhaps traveling a little bit too close to the riders. The UCI is trying to tighten up on that because they don't want the motorcycles, the camera motorcycles, to give an advantage to a chase group or a breakaway group. So unfortunately, on this tricky descent, we don't have the coverage from the motorcycle guys. The camera guys are trying to pick the roads up for us in a minute or so. But
I'll be very honest, some of the motorcycles, and no disrespect at all, just because of how tight the roads are, the bicycles will actually be descending faster than the motorbikes can.
Yeah, if I was a cameraman on the back of a bike today, I might call in sick.
Yeah, well, you certainly would get sick. I'd have a packet of Tums ready as well. Yeah, but this beautiful region really sets us up. Apologies once again if we can't get you the shots of the riders on the descent, but we will get them when they pop out the bottom. Here we go. Sure. We've caught ourselves up, so well done for our TV motorcycle guys as we try and make our way forwards. This should be the riders that are running off the front, the riders that went over the top first, and we'll try and chase them down. But there will be an open section in the valley when we pop out at the end of the 8 kilometers. Well done to Jan, our chopper pilot, finding a little bit of tarmac on the strip. But this is what we talked about. When we come into this descent, what was a 20 rider, there will be people scattered to the 4 winds now. Now,
with this challenging descent, breaking the peloton apart, that could remain if the front runners decide to keep the tension on the chain. If they don't and they look over their shoulders to see what has happened, riders will come back together, because remember, from the bottom of this pass to the finish line is 8 kilometers. So those who have 20, 30, 40 seconds can capitalize on that if they continue to apply pressure. If they hesitate for a second and start looking over their shoulders, they're going to provide a carrot for the chaser riders.
2018 at the end of this stage, which was stage number 1, marked a scattered finish. It was bits and pieces all over the place. So very, very interesting from us from a standpoint of view. It could change the race, but the good thing for us was the yellow jersey is close enough It's going to be very interesting to see what Gustav can do. He wasn't in that three-man jump away, but he is by far the strongest descender in the field, and he's got the most experience on this terrain, having taken this stage win in the previous event.
Well, you talked about last year, he was clocked at 80k an hour, but not down the first pass. The first pass is pretty easy. In fact, we saw the camera bikes show us the speedo. It's easy to clock 80k an hour on a very wide descent where you've got a lot of line of sight and stuff like that. But he clocked 80k an hour on this descent, and that's pretty impressive because you can't always see the outcome of these corners, so you have to know going in. Now, being a Joburg guy, he probably came up here and recce'd the course before last year's tour. He did last year's tour, he was successful. He probably recce'd it again because he wants to be successful again this year. So let's see if he can bring this back.
Yeah, and it does look like this is the top two riders off the front. We'll wait for confirmation, but there are definitely two riders working well together here right now. We're just trying to pick up on when we can actually see through the trees. Apologies, we can't give you all of the racing action, but this is the open section where it flies out. This is going to be the lead bunch, so it has splintered, but there is a nice group out front. One of the ACDCs, we just passed them. We're going to click it up into 6th gear and try and catch up to these guys. But as we have said, it is a downhill, a flat, and an ascent. So if you're not flying down a hill, you are cooking up the hill. There's yellow, so that puts us in a good position, but there are some blobs on the screen up the road, which means there are riders ahead of Besson. But Besson is still in good nick, but they are absolutely charging. That corner alone would have been in the high 80s.
Well, Besson looks like he might have 5 riders with him, which will give him some firepower to chase back, but I still think we've got HB Kruger up the road. Let's see what
there's a small. There will be a small respite. You know, the guys have been on the rev limiter since they got to the KOM. The King of the Mountains was a long time ago now, and since then it has been either descending with your heart in your mouth or having to hammer to keep the pace on the ups. We've seen the splintering. The splintering came as we crested the knuckle and started heading down into the Mokuba's Cliff Valley. True. From now on, you'll see a couple of riders able to bring each other back. Some riders will roll off ever so slightly, just trying to recover and get that heart rate down.
So this road will carry on for a little bit, and then it'll eventually come to a T-junction where we will turn right. That's important because then we go over the very picturesque Letaba River. You'll see those with the fantastic shots of these impressive bridges. Now that is about 4K from before the line. So we're starting to get it narrowed down. Looks like we've got Pro Touch, perhaps 2 riders from the same team chasing hard.
We're going down to our leaders there, so we've made our way back to the lead bunch, and this is confirmed, the race leaders. So very, very strong numbers coming in. Besson is still in good shape, and that looks like it is the chasers. So these two have actually broken off the front. That's what we're getting from our choppers. These are our race leaders, the 2 riders in a solo, but you can see that's a 6-man group, and Besson is going to be the horsepower, and he's going to be the whip in that group. He's going to work everyone to try and close things down.
Very, very interesting panning out here, as we thought.
And by my eye, and you're going to correct me maybe, but those look like 2 Pro Touch shirts to me.
It does.
So I can just make out a strip of green on their backs as well.
Love to see. I don't see any cars, any lead car or lead moto with them, so I'm not too sure if there's people ahead, but we're panning up ahead on the chopper. We can certainly see traffic has been pulled over, but those guys might be the guys, but they should have a lead vehicle with them.
Apologies, we're going to get some confirmation as soon as we can, but we are getting close to the very, very sharp end of this one.
Lone rider here.
We're getting some information from our man down on the ground there, Miles, telling us that the front group is split on the downhill. 3 groups have now formed on the road. The breakaway, the chase group, and another chase group. The yellow jersey is confirmed in the 3rd group, chasing hard.
This could be Konashev. That looks like a bigger dimension data rider, and Konashev is a bigger lad.
So confirmation, the yellow jersey is not in the lead at the moment. That's Konashev, confirmed. He is absolutely charging. He is the white shirt wearer from yesterday, the fastest young rider, and he is going so low.
Oh, fantastic. This
look at that shape.
Not only is he leading the best under 23 competition, but this is challenging the overall GC. And what a fantastic move this is. This is a great story. You know, like father, like son here, but it's still a ways out. And if this committed group of about 10 riders gets together, he could be caught.
Well, if they're telling me on the ground that Yellow is in group number 3, here's Yellow. So he is working super hard, and he's going to have to try and make some big allies out there. 54 on the wheel and charging hard as he can, but not necessarily cutting a good enough line through the air. That's Dorian Percril, and he is riding for Club Cycliste Saint Louis. And everyone's trying to just get the chase going. It's too late in the day to be trying to get organized. These are the shapes you need to be making. Julius was at the back of that one as well. Julius can work, but of course they are on different teams. Julius riding for Pro Touch, and TEG, his former teammate, Besson, is there. But this is a solo breakout, best young rider, and at the moment he's going to be young rider in white and red going to bed tonight, because this is the biggest attack today.
Well, it's good to see that the team from Reunion, St. Louison, is in the mix. I spoke to them yesterday, and they were a little bit disappointed in the fact that in 175k there was only one talent climb that they could capitalize on, and they didn't. So they were looking forward to today, and they're in the front sort of 15-20 riders, so that's nice for them.
Well, I spoke to their team mechanic, young Doug Patterson there, and he was telling me that you have never seen a face like Alexander Konichev after he crossed the line. He knew he'd made a mistake. More importantly, he knew he actually had the win and gave it away. So today, this is what I can do. This is what he's telling the world and the rest of the peloton. He's grinding away there, but I feel like he's going to get closed.
He's going to get closed. Yeah, for my money, just to be objective, I don't want to bag on our big local team of Dimension Data, but to just be objective, if you've got 3 riders out of 11 coming to the line, you have to fire bullets, because you cannot guarantee the sprint. And they didn't do that. They were a little bit too cocky in the sense that they were relying on their sprint. And you've got 3 guys. Use one of them. Mm-hmm. Start firing bullets. If the guys bring them back, you've got another one to counterattack, and you have another one to counterattack. They didn't do that, and they lost the race yesterday, so they are being aggressive today.
Well, he just survived over that little false knuckle, but the second group here, which doesn't contain the yellow jersey, I'll confirm that. This is the second group, and it looks like Pro Touch are heading this one up with Office Guru. Office Guru have got 5-man horsepower in this mix as well, and they are starting to pull things back. This is a launch and an attack. This is Office Guru trying to bridge the gap to Konichev. That's our breakout leader. So this is going to be maybe an alliance. Konichev moves over, and it is going to be Office Guru off the front.
Well, Office Guru could tell that Konichev was coming back, so they launched the counterattack. I wasn't too sure about how smart a move that was, because Pritzen is lying in 3rd overall, and Pritzen stands a lot to gain here. But what's happening here is he's sending a teammate up the road, forcing the others to react, and we've got Pro Touch and TEG reacting, while Princeton sits in the wheels.
Yeah, Hendricks is in that group as well. So for me, that's going to be an interesting one. We've got Hendricks in the mix there as well. Kent Main, there is a ton of horsepower. You've got, that looks like
Van Heerden.
I didn't know if it was Marais and Van Heerden. We're watching out for, that looks like Hendricks coming in through there as well.
Yep.
We've got some very key players starting to make their moves. We're not quite at the T-junction, but we are not far away from it. So we're inside of a 10-kilometer countdown now.
What I love about this stage, being at about the 100k mark versus yesterday, is that the distance allows for a lot more aggressive riding, and we're seeing that in the closing stages here with Hendricks attacking, we've got Office Guru attacking, we've got Dimension Data for Quebecer attacking. So this is making for better viewing.
None of these attacks are holding, though. That's my concern at the moment. Everyone is getting out, and again, these are these false climbs. One more short descent after this into the T-junction. We bust right. As soon as you cross the Olifants River, the big bridge heading into town, then it's going to change things up. These small climbs are coming at the nasty time for us, entertaining. Absolutely fantastic. For the riders, it is nasty. The big story on the road is this is Besson. No one was helping him work. He was down 28 seconds. That would lose the GC. So Gustav is having to do a solo fight back just to try and hang on to yellow.
Well, I don't know if I have to eat my words here, but yes, last year he descended so well, but on this year it seems as though he may have had an issue on the descent here, because that's where he lost the 28 seconds.
Yeah, it just didn't seem to be in the right position when people were pulling the pin. Definitely mistakes were coming in, but these little climbs may be able to see him come back into it. He's a good solo time trialist. He can drop the hammer when he wants to, but he has got a huge ask right now. All these attacks are coming into play. Could play into his hands. He's solo mission right now. He looked like he'd gapped the group that he was in, which was group 3. He had around about a 10-second gap over them when we picked up on him, but he has got a huge bridge to gap.
Well, it looks like the
he's
guys
being
are
pulled back.
Yeah. No, I mean, the other guys have something to gain here.
Look at the
too.
attacks coming up the road there as well. Sorry to jump in. Attacks coming thick and fast now because this is the final knuckle before we do the last short descent.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. There's guys there too. Jay Julius is with him.
Attacks coming thick. This is big numbers coming in here. Everyone wants to lead going down into the T-junction, and that is really what everyone wants. But you have to lead across the river, and you have to lead off the off-ramp as well. We'll pick up on those visuals when they come in. We're about to pop out of the official end of the pass, and that's going to be the T-junction right.
Well, after that T-junction, we've got a kind of gradual downhill to the Letaba River, and then once we cross the Letaba River, the next off-ramp, which you'll see, is an uphill. That is the last opportunity, in my book, for a ferocious attack that could cause separation.
This is another straight bit of road. This is the first time you pop out into a bit of clear air as well. So the groups coming over that knuckle behind will be able to look up the road and see exactly where everyone is. This is in the flatlands. This isn't the river we're crossing. This is just a low point, and then we do a long gradual climb. It's around about 800 meters, and this is going to ask everything. This is where we knew we would see some attacks coming in when we rolled this morning.
Oh, that car's got to get out the way. Thank you very much.
Car's got to get out the way. Hendricks is at the back here, and he's looking a little bit spent.
Yeah, well, he had just put in an attack, actually, while you were mentioning things. So he put in an attack, and so he's probably trying to recover from that. Moreira is there. Van Heerden is there. So those are guys who will put in another punch or two. While you were mentioning things as well, we had Konashev attacking again.
Yeah, Konashev trying to get himself back in. Maybe he just wanted a recovery. He was out there for quite a long time. The solo mission didn't work. He needed to find some buddies out there. Pritzen is sitting at the front as well. He's rocking and rolling on the 63. And now, this is an interesting situation. This is Gustav Besson in trouble. He's desperate for teammates to try and take him forward. There's no one in that bunch that can work for him. He wants teammates to try and bridge this gap. This is the end of the GC for Yellow at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'm not too sure. He may have riders up the road. I would have my riders drop back and try and bring him back to
that was the team car. Quick whisper. They said to him, no one's here to help you. If you want this, you've got to go by yourself. And as soon as they said that to him, he turned his head and grabbed the bars and ripped them off.
Yeah, well, it's not long, it's less than 10K. He should be able to put that effort in for himself. He has an ally in Jay Julius, the most aggressive rider from yesterday.
I don't know about ally. He's got him on his wheel.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
different teams, remember?
No, certainly different teams.
Former teammates.
Yeah. Certainly different teams, but he has as much to gain. He has as much to gain by getting back into the race because he is in the top 11 overall.
Yeah, this is going to be a change for the GCs, 100%. There are different names climbing the ladder. This is officially the top 4 that are going to go over the first knuckle first, and this is the chase bunch. So the group has now become 4 different groups on the road, and that is the chase group now trying to catch up and match to these 4 riders. The 4 riders are not wanting to mount an attack over the knuckle, but they simply have to. If they do not attack over this knuckle, they will be closed down by the chasing group of firepower of 10 strong sets of legs.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting. Who would have thought, I mean, we said it earlier, that the descent could play a role in shaping the outcome of this race?
This is Group 3, 45 seconds back.
Group 3 has the yellow jersey on the road.
That's bad news. That's real bad news at the moment. So these are the racers running at the front here. We're coming into the signs, so we are coming up to the end, the official end of the descent. It's been flatland, but remember, it is flatland with small little kicks. So we are coming up to the end of the descent of the Mokuba's Kloof Valley, and we're going into flatland racing for a very short time as well. Just a couple of kilometers. They come around the sweeping right-hander, a short, almost flat descent, and then we go into a T-junction. This is Group 3, and there is urgency here. Major urgency. Right now, they understand they're not going to get the stage win, but they need to bring back time. 45 seconds is unacceptable for the GCs.
Well, to give you an idea of how fast the stage is run today, we have at this next right-hander that's coming up, that'll be the 88.5 kilometer mark, and we're about 2 hours, 5 minutes into racing. So about an average speed of 44 kilometers an hour, 43 kilometers an hour. Bear in mind that it has been an undulating stage, and there was that climb of roughly 8 kilometers for the King of the Mountains. So, not a bad speed considering the terrain. And at the end of the day, we have 96.2 kilometers or 60 miles for the stage distance. We have about 1,381 meters of climbing for a total of 4,500 feet. So that's the stats today. Wind is on the nose with a northeasterly wind of about 7 kilometers an hour.
Slight headwind into the finish chute, so we'll be expecting to see the speeds not necessarily get affected. It's a slight downhill finish, and we still see the guys absolutely charging in here. Once again, this is Gustav Besson in yellow, but possibly not when he goes to bed tonight. He is charging, trying to pull back as much time as he can. He is in time trial zone. This is the flatland sections, so a little flat, small kick at the end there, and just to the right-hand side is the town of Zanin. So we are in spitting distance of the finish of stage number 2 of the Tour de Limpopo. This was stage number 1. Remember the shot just over to the right-hand side, to the top left-hand side of your screen. You'll see the town of Zanin, so they are super close. Gustav Besson absolutely charging, and whoever's on his wheel right now is getting a free ride.
Well, in the front group, we've got 4 Office Guru guys. So that's good for that team. Pritson has allies there. But at the back of this group, which is the yellow jersey group, there's 2 Office Guru guys sitting in there. They're not doing anything. They're not obliged to do anything. Their team leader's up the road. Besson has to chase.
Yeah, and Jade Julius, normally you see him absolutely burying himself. This is a Sunday lunch cruise for Jude Julius at the moment. Jade Julius at the moment, excuse me. Andreas Negrini on the 122 for AC/DC, doing a nice job there as well. And most aggressive rider has the red, but again, that red I don't think is going to be on his shoulders tonight. For my money, it looks like Konishev should be going to bed with the red.
Nice to see the Benediction cycling team from Rwanda have a couple of riders surrounding the yellow jersey, so that's a difference from yesterday when they were in the main peloton some minutes back. So
yeah, we did see a little bit of action in the early running today from Sampada, some of the other teams that didn't get too much airtime yesterday. Alpha Bodyworks Giant also got in the mix. Team Swift from Botswana, they were very strong. What we didn't see today, interestingly enough, was the showing that we saw in the flatlands from Team Limpopo Province. It looked like they are fast on the flat. And again, we've got some nice visuals coming up for Team Rwanda.
Yeah, I think Simon Hooperitz from the Rwanda team told the guys, you've got to stick with the yellow jersey tomorrow. This is a stage that can favor you guys. You climb well, thinner riders. Obviously, you've got thicker, more sort of sprinter build riders who did well yesterday, Alexander Konishev. So nice to see the Rwanda guys up there today after yesterday's stage where they didn't do so well.
And the second half of the stage, the air tends to get a little bit thicker and heavier as well. I know exactly what you're saying. I can feel it down here in studio. The sun is beating down. Here is the T-junction. We've been staring into the future, trying to look for this the whole way through the stage, and this marks a real literal and figurative turning point on the tour. This is the 88-kilometer marker. We are less than 10 kilometers from the stripe.
8K to go, Matt, and so we've got this road that goes pretty straight, and then we're going to go over the Letaba River. That's the fantastic visual that you'll get of the 2 bridges, and this starts to play into the cat and mouse games. The guys know that they're getting closer to the line. There's no
See the
more
shake of the legs.
Yep.
Gotta love that. That was Pritson having a shakeout. He's riding in the white shirt, 5th wheel, under the colors of Office Guru, and this looks like it's the second. Is it the first or second bunch?
No, I think this is the first bunch because we've got the comms up the road there.
Everyone's got their hands up. They want a little bit of juice. The guys are wanting to get some juice on their throats. I tell you what, that's not 45 seconds anymore. That's been brought down to close to 30 seconds, and Gustav Besson is doing what he can. He can do nothing else but time trial this one home.
Well, as we come to the banana plantations of the Tsanin area, if the front riders don't keep the tension on the pedals, they're going to be brought back. This is where, here we approach the bridges. This is where this group needs to put some guys. Office Guru, they've got four riders in this group. They should send them to the front to give the advantage to Pritson.
Inside of 5 kilometers on the countdown, so the tension is definitely building. We'll go around the sweeper and we'll start to look for the off-ramp to the main road heading into Zanin. So we're still on the highway at the moment. Just before the off-ramp, we'll be looking for the river crossing, and then we veer left. There's often an attack up that last little knuckle, because straight after that, it is a very, very short 2-kilometer downhill to the line.
I mean, what's happening here with Guru?
Besson is making mistakes here. He's looking for help where there isn't help. He just needs to simply do it all by himself. It's a horrible position that he is in right now, but he simply has to just keep it on the pegs, and it looks like he's almost rolled out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point, it's going to be a race between Dimension Data and Office Guru, and Office Guru is putting in an attack.
This is the flatland section, so we are either just before or just after the bridge. We'll wait for it to pan out, because just after this knuckle, we start looking for the off-ramp to the left-hand side.
Well, the off-ramp is where you're going to have to put in your last attack, because if you haven't caused separation there, it's going to be a bunch finish. And like you said, a downhill bunch finish is very difficult to read because you don't have the advantage of coming out of the slipstream like you would have on a flat or uphill stage.
Everyone's got a good chance at this one, I got to tell you. This is really, really exciting, building up nicely. Office Guru, Pro Touch, TEG. There's a ton of key riders at the front there.
And the two ends up for Proud Beginner riders in the navy
They
blue
stayed
at
there
the
as
back.
well, yeah.
They're going to kind of watch each other. HB Kruger in the red jersey.
Look
for
at the
Alpha
top of
Body
the
Works.
screen as well. We're about to do a short roll down, then we're going to be crossing the river, and the riders will already be able to see. It's a brilliant shot for the riders as well. If they just glance above or just out of the top of their glasses, they'll be able to see a small dip and the small climb. They know exactly what is on the page from now on, and you will see the intensity built. There's going to be a couple of attacks coming shortly.
Yeah, so right now we know that Basson's team is going to change on GC by a little bit, not by too much, because they had minutes on the field yesterday. So he is going to lose seconds, but the race on GC is going to be between Office Guru and Dimension Data. There are time bonuses of 10 seconds for first place and 5 seconds for second place on the line. That is going to come into play between Konashev, Brown, and Pritzen.
Crossing the river. This is starting to get a little bit gnarly. So the crossing of the river, that's the low point from here on out. As soon as you've crossed the river and you're back on dry land, you start doing a gradual climb up to the left-hand side, and normally you'll see riders coming into some kind of position to try and do an attack. Attacks have to happen here. They cannot happen over the knuckle, but I have been wrong many on occasion, and I'll put my hand up if I'm wrong this time. But we're expecting to see attacks come from this point up until just at the top of the shot there, where you see the off-ramp coming into view.
I'm going to put my money on Maria. David Maria is probably the most aggressive rider in the country. You see him, Paul Boxing Day, the guy must have attacked 15 times in a 40k race.
On the bridge, this is the big chase as well. So they are pulling back some time. It's less than 30 seconds right now, I can tell you. So they have pulled back less than 30 seconds. So I don't think they're going to be getting onto the wheel of these guys. But this stage last year, at about this point, you saw riders really back off. This is not a back off. This is closing things down. So watch the tempo of Gustav Busson. He's now got a carrot. He can see the lads up the road, and he is pulling back time. And 124 is getting an absolute free ride, an absolute perler. If he puts in some work as well, Colin Ormanstad from ACDC Losso could be climbing the ladder as well.
Potentially. I'm not too sure if they were in the break yesterday of 11 riders that came to the line, but you almost want to say, man, had Basson put his head down a little bit earlier, perhaps he would be a little bit closer. But for my money, you know, if I was the guys at Office Guru, I would be driving it so hard to maroon him. Take the opportunity when you have.
Well, the pace has definitely slowed too much because there's constant reactions from Guru. They don't want to get eaten up. This is where you're going to see riders try and pull the pin. This is the last chance to try and solo mission this one, and that's a tasty gap right now.
You got to react. This might be Hendricks. No, it's Dimension Data. So Dimension Data for Quebec are reacting to this, which is important because they've got Alexander Konashev who could finish this sprint off. They've got Connor Brown in there as well.
Pulling
They've got
back.
enough riders for a lead out.
Pulling it back. So up and over. You don't go straight over. You go, left-hand side. And this means we are inside of now 2.5 kilometers remaining.
And in the red jersey there in 7th position is HB Kruger. Now let's not forget, while he is a good climber, he finished 3rd in the Cape Town Cycle Tour in a bunch sprint to Nolan Hoffman before. So this guy can sprint. He's a good all-round rider.
So Kurt, as we expected, the wheat has been trimmed. There's no fat left on this bone. This is the top 6 riders that are going to take this down the hill. Watch for a small descent. There's a slight right-hander, slight left-hander. You come under a bridge. As soon as you are under that bridge, you are inside of a 500-meter sprint.
Well, they must be less than 2 minutes from the finish line right across the road from our commentary position. So this is where the cat and mouse takes place. Someone's got to go.
Too slow.
Someone's got to go. There's going to be riders coming from behind. Wait for the Enza riders.
Yep, the queue has formed, so this is going to be the lead-out train to see who is going to get the job done. We're under the bridge, and if you actually look forward, if you open up the shot, you'd actually be able to see the arch. So we are just moments away inside of a 1 kilometer countdown.
What an exciting finish. I'm looking for riders to come from behind because this is their opportunity So
In the tuck. This is just the waiting game. It's a never-ending run down this hill. It is a descent, so a couple of the riders just saving their legs. Don't want to let them go cold for too long, but this is a clean descent. You can see Office Guru off the front starting to do the Chris Froome. Now there's a breakaway in the chasers. So this is the clear chasing group. Jay Julius now hits the front.
Pritson, who's in the white jersey for the best under 23 South African rider, is sitting there in 4th place. He's the white jersey with the blue shorts on. Remember, he came 3rd yesterday, so he is a good sprint finisher. He is in the running. He's got a rider on the front who's setting the tempo.
That's the bridge. That's the bridge. So we are now inside of the 1 kilometer countdown. I was a little bit pre. That was the pipe. This is the pedestrian bridge. We are inside of a kilometer countdown. So this is going to build up into a big sprint from here on out. And the bunch is tightening up. Check it out.
There
All the guys coming forward.
Riders.
Enza riders. Proud beginners starting to come to the front.
Now,
Heads up.
less than a K to go. In fact, that's our finishing position with the buildings on the left-hand side. We've got David Marais looks to be leading out. Perhaps Stephen van Heerden on the front, or it's van Heerden who's actually doing the lead out.
Check it out.
Connor
in the
Brown.
polka dots as well. Connor Brown comes to the front. Maybe gone a little bit too early. Connor Brown, though, takes the finish with Konachev right on his wheel. So Connor Brown takes the finish, and that's going to move him up real big in the GCs. Wasn't the big sprint that I was expecting as well, and it's actually very, very tough to call this one because of the descent. The riders are already up to almost full cruising speed. But this is the link rider. Watch out for this. It's going to be a challenge to see if we can see the red stay on the shoulders of Jay Julius. But he has broken away and he has put some time into the GC leader coming into the stage, and that was the yellow shoulders of Gustos Besson. But this is a big attack coming in late from Jay Julius, also a rider that possibly timed things wrong on that descent.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if Jay Julius can still be given the red jersey award after not finishing in the front. I don't know who the officials, and that's really the officials' call for the most aggressive rider of the day. I mean, this is kind of defensive, but still a good rider. But, you know, we got to look at dimension data. They made a mistake yesterday. They have totally redeemed themselves today. They still lead the King of the Mountains competition. In fact, their King of the Mountains rider won a sprint finish for the stage. Alexander Konachev also finished up there for a good position overall.
Okay, I'm going to jump out. There's Gustav coming in. He's going to have a story to tell, but the first man I'm going to go catch up with is Connor Brown.
Well, here it is, Kurt Begemann with the wrap-up while Matt goes and finds some riders for some interviews. Very interesting stage today, 96.6 kilometers, 60 miles. We had one hotspot sprint round about the 26-kilometer mark. And we had a crash, unfortunately, earlier in today. In that crash, Brad Potgieter went off the side of the road, hooked a front wheel as he was trying to get back onto the tarmac. A bunch of riders went down. The yellow jersey was caught up behind that crash. It didn't really affect him too much. Certainly he had to chase, but he did make it back to the front runners at that time. But unfortunately, Brad Potgieter's crash did cause the abandonment of Orion Craig, rider number 104, and Brad's teammate, unfortunately. So a little irony right there. And Orion is the only American in the race. I spoke with him yesterday. Interesting story. He was abandoned and has only started riding in the last 3 years. Very interesting story. 3 years in the game, 2 years as an elite rider. So unfortunate to see him gone. After that sprint finish, we had the King of the Mountains. And the King of the Mountains was a very interesting result for us today. We had HB Kruger from the Alpha Bodyworks Giant team. He won that. There was a small breakaway, in fact, before that of about 4 or 5 riders. HB Kruger won that from David Marais, who rides for Enza, Proud Beginners. And in 3rd place was Connor Brown from Dimension Data for Quebecer. Brown sort of bridged across right before the crest of that climb to earn points, and then Kent Main was in the 4th place getting 1 point. So that combined with yesterday's King of the Mountains points put in a total to have Connor Brown lead that competition at the end of stage 2 with 7 points. In 2nd place is HB Kruger for Alpha Bodyworks with 5 points. He's now on the board for the King of the Mountains jersey. And then in 3rd place we have a 3-way tie, 3 riders with 3 points apiece. David Marais from Enza Proud Beginners, Kent Main, and Girdlestone for Office Guru. So we've got some interesting stuff right there with the King of the Mountains jersey. Now, after the climb, which happened at the 56-kilometer mark, we had some very undulating terrain, which caused some separations, and there was a group of about 20 riders who got to the top of the mokuba descent. So this was interesting because we arrived at the top of the descent. It's not like we had to go up. We had already climbed up for the King of the Mountains points of the day, and then we were along a long escarpment for about 20 to 30 k's before we took to the top of the mokuba pass. That is a very technical 8-kilometer descent with a lot of hairpin bends. Surface area is good, but a lot of tricky tricky hairpin bends where you can't see whether the corners tighten up or whether they extend. And it caused major separation, so much so that Gustav Besson was marooned and lost some time, almost 20 to 30 seconds at times. I'm not too sure what the time gap is for him. We'll find out more about that as Matt does some interviews, but he chased hard pretty much from the bottom of that pass, which is 8 kilometers from the line. He chased all the way, didn't have much help. Last stage's most aggressive rider, Jade Julius in the red jersey, he was with Gustav Besson. He didn't help him much. Besson also had 2 Office Guru riders sitting on, so he was in a tough position today. The yellow jersey is going to change hands, but the story of the day for me is the redemption of Dimension Data. Dimension Data got it wrong yesterday. They had 3 riders in the group of 11, and they didn't win the stage. Yes, they took the King of the Mountains jersey, but they didn't win the stage. They kind of banked on their sprinting ability. Today, not only did they confirm their holding of the King of the Mountains jersey, but they also won the stage. Connor Brown winning the stage, and Alexander Konashev finishing up there in 2nd or 3rd position. Now remember that there's time bonuses on the line, and so that's going to come into play and start to separate those riders who finished together yesterday, those 11 riders who finished together yesterday. Now those time bonuses are going to come into play on the finish line and going to put people into different jerseys. In fact, Connor Brown might now lead the race. I'm still waiting for confirmation on that, but might now lead the race in terms of the yellow jersey, and he may have the polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains. So waiting for confirmation of that. I think that Alexander Konashev is still going to remain in the white jersey. All right, these riders are coming in. This is the main peloton coming in to finish up the stage. We can hear the chopper up above. And so this is the rest of the group chasing for the line hard, trying to limit time. Here they come in. That's the peloton finishing for the day, and we've got an interview coming in with Matt, who has the stage winner, Connor Brown.
At the end of an incredible stage number 2 for the Tour de Limpopo 2019, the overnight King of the Mountains walks away with the first stage win of his tour. Connor, that was a spectacular stage. Tell us about some of the highlights.
Yeah, definitely the biggest highlight was that descent. It was so fast and it was pretty crazy. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun.
And coming down to the line, no one knows how to actually gauge this one. It's a tough one for a descend, a downhill finish.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other guys went really early, so I kind of just played it safe and waited till we kind of got to the barriers and then just launched my sprint there. And, yeah.
Were you aware of some of the breaks that were happening throughout the day? I thought this was going to be a little bit of an easy day. It was a wild one.
Yeah, I think there's a break that went with like 20 Ks into the race, so we thought that was pretty dangerous. So on the climb, we just got all the guys on the front and just went full gas to try and get the break back and also drop some of the sprinters, so yeah.
Your win is going to change up the GCs as well, because I see, obviously we were doing the live stream, Gustav was on the big chase back. He was off your wheel.
Yeah, we were coming down the descent. We noticed he wasn't there, so I think all the guys just really started to put the gas on because there was that yellow jersey on the line. So yeah.
Thanks, Connor. We'll see you on the line tomorrow. So now that is 2 stages wrapped up. The last 2 stages are going to change things up. Stage number 3 tomorrow, we're going to be staying around the area, but then the final stage, we climb up that crazy descent that you just came down, Connor. Good luck.
Oh, thank you.